Jerusalem. Let's move 55 kilometres from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. Let's bring in Itamar Rabinovich, the former ambassador of Israel to the US, founder and president of the Israel Institute and professor emeritus of Tel Aviv University. Itamar, really good to talk to you tonight. Can we begin on the humanitarian situation? Do you agree with the UN assessment of this dire need, of what aid organisations, hospital staff too, say on the ground, the extent of the hunger crisis that the Netanyahu government has previously called fake news?
Yeah, I of course don't know. I'm not in Gaza. I have not been to Gaza recently. I cannot judge. I can assume that it is a very difficult humanitarian situation, and I strongly support any measure that would put an end to that.
When you look at what I mentioned a moment ago, this eroding of diplomatic support from once steadfast allies, how do you view that?
Gravely, sternly. Israel is a country that was created by the UN. It has lasted and persisted through international support through the years of its existence. This is something we must not lose. Very openly, I am a critic of the Israeli government, the current government and its policies, and I think that this is one of the gravest errors committed by Mr. Netanyahu's government. I would like to see that we need to open up to the world, take it into account, and think seriously about Israel's international legitimacy and standing.
Does it frustrate you to the extent to which people like you who speak out, and politicians in opposition, and anybody, Europeans, for example, like we've heard today, President Macron is accused of having a crusade against the Jewish state, the conflation between criticising the state and anti-Semitism?
Yeah, of course, the very term crusade has religious overtones. I'm not sure whether the foreign minister had that in mind because we also use crusade as a normal term. So I don't know what he had in mind, but this government wants to dig in. I should emphasize that in public opinion polls, if elections were to be held in Israel today, the government would lose. The opposition has a clear majority over the coalition. Elections are not scheduled before 2026. But I think that pretty soon we will start to see the effect of the approaching elections. So
we have a crisis, as we're hearing, a humanitarian crisis, a crisis between allies, certainly a change in tone. It's not quite the same rhetoric, let's face it, from President Trump, as we're hearing from European allies as well. And we have a potential constitutional crisis as well, don't we, in Israel, with Mr. Netanyahu trying to remove the head of Shin Bet, put in place another one, his challenge from the Supreme Court on that, and also he's got his own court case coming up for alleged corruption, for bribery, which he denies. In the face of this, The Economist put it quite clearly this week, the newspaper, saying that something has to give, that either there's going to be a complete fragmentation, a fracture of its relations with allies, or if there's a U-turn, we could soon see the end of Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you agree?
I agree. My sense is that the Netanyahu era or period is approaching an end, that we will see a change of government, that we will see a change of policy. But let's also bear in mind that the current deadlock is also caused by Hamas. I mean, they can just accept the proposal put by the United States. There would be at least 2 months of relief.
Yes.
At this point, cost of releasing some hostages who are currently held in inhuman conditions underground. So there are two sides or two parties to this coin, but of course no one has too many expectations of an organization like Hamas, and there is a tendency to look at a parliamentary democracy like Israel and expect more.
But that's it, isn't it? You've got to the crux of it. It's different expectations. An ally to work out, as European leaders would see it, a solution together, even if some of the finer political details or the bigger political details, like a two-state solution, is not agreed to between the government and European leaders. They're fragmented on that. But how you go about that? As you say, Hamas could simply release the hostages tomorrow. There'd be a very different situation. They haven't. Hamas also saying that they want a guarantee that the war comes to a complete end, to which Israel would say, well, hang on, what if there is a re-emergent Hamas starts to provide Kalashnikovs to the youth again? They need to be able to go back in and deal with that. Those points are all valid. But it's coming to a point now to which, what would your message be? I would say we're hearing from the response from the Israeli government to European allies. What would your message be as a former diplomat and ambassador in talking to the likes of President Macron? Yeah.
With all due respect to the European countries and states, the one state and government that has and can have more influence is the U.S. government. The last time we had a deal between Israel and Hamas and a partial release of hostages was when Mr. Witkoff came to Jerusalem and persuaded Mr. Netanyahu in no uncertain terms that he had to do it. So there is, the whole world has question marks about President Trump, Israelis as well, but we know that the key to a real change is held by him.
Have you found personally, Itamar, in speaking and being critical before, you've come under personal attack, personal criticism? Have you been accused of anti-Semitism?
No, not even called a self-hating Jew. No, no. The Chile is a democratic country. People express their views, sharp differences of opinion, but. Personally, I speak in protest meetings, I write, I speak on media, and I've not been personally attacked or vilified in Israel, no.
A final thought, you talk about a very key point, which is what matters ultimately to Israel is what its biggest backer says and does. Words and deeds coming from President Trump. But what would you like to see President Trump do to bring about an end to this conflict?
In a way, he will have to do something he will not do, that is to say, take a very wise plan put by his predecessor, but this is not something he would do. So I think it needs to happen in stages, to take the current plan on the table, get it done, use the 2 months of hiatus in order to start working on a long-term solution, which has to be not with Hamas, but with the Palestinian Authority and with the participation of Arab states and the international community.
When you say he wouldn't do what his predecessor had done, you mean when it comes to talk or threats of withdrawing key military aid or financial support for Israel?
President Biden proposed many months ago that Hamas be replaced by an entity that would also include elements from the Palestinian Authority, would be helped by Arab Gulf countries and European countries. The only way for Israel to defeat Hamas is to bring an alternative. If you don't bring an alternative, Hamas will be there. That's one of the paradoxes or mistakes of the current policy of our government.
Can I ask just your thoughts on the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, this US-Israeli use of private contractors that began and was suspended on Tuesday after looting, chaotic scenes that we saw? Whether you think that is something that is worth continuing to advance, or would you advise that that Israel starts to use the UN again on the proviso clearly that Benjamin Netanyahu believes that allows aid to get into the hands of Hamas?
That is correct, but I think when it comes to humanitarian issues, the humanitarian aspect needs to be supreme. What worked very well for several months earlier can be restored. So I would be for going back to the model that functioned successfully for several months earlier.
Itamar, very good to hear your thoughts tonight. Good to talk to you. Itamar Rabinovich, former ambassador of Israel to the US. Thank you.